Stereotypes in business, needed or not? What would you think if I told you CEO of one of the most prestigious investment banks in the world is a DJ? Goldman Sachs CEO will perform at Lollapalooza. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon, who DJs in his spare time, is among the dozens of musical acts set to perform at Lollapalooza this summer. The festival announced Tuesday, marking the latest big stage the investment bank chief has performed on. One wouldn't have thought that a prominent personality in the world of finance like David Solomon would engage in activities like DJing. This is because people with high levels of intellect and strategy, especially those in the business profession, are expected to act in a certain way, a conventionally perfect way. As a result, future generations of aspiring entrepreneurs feel obliged to change their personalities in a desperate attempt to achieve this perfection. The qualities which inspired individuals seek to embody are often the stereotypes of modern work ethic. For instance, a common myth states, early to bed and early to rise makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise, whereas in reality, people's productivity levels are different based on various habits. This video ultimately aims to shed light on some of these stereotypes, as well as provide examples of people who have broken these traditional stereotypes numerous times.
We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this.
Some of the smallest flaws are seen as unprofessional.
Some recent article about how I'm such a great marketer, and I say the stupidest things that can't possibly be true. My issue is that I don't have a filter, not that I have too much of a filter. Much less than we spend on healthcare, but maybe more than we spend on lipstick, something like that. And I like lipstick. It's not like I've got anything against it. Yeah, I can't wait for that comment to go out there. Well, I think any natural resource extraction on Mars would be, the output would be for Mars. Like, it definitely wouldn't make sense to transport stuff 200 million miles back to Earth. Honestly, like if you had like crack cocaine on Mars, like in pre-packaged, pallets, it still wouldn't make sense to transport it back here. Maybe good times for the Martians, but not back here. It'd be kind of weird if the aliens landed in the ocean with parachutes and be like, okay, nothing to fear. I think it ends up being a moot point because you want to bring the spaceship back. Like, these spaceships are expensive, okay? They're hard to build. You can't just leave them there. So whether or not people want to come back or not is kind of like, they can jump on if they want, but they need the spaceship back.
As shown by the examples of articles displayed before, some of the smallest flaws in human personality are seen as unprofessional in the business world. An example of this is the habit of having an untidy desk. Workers with an untidy desk are generally impacted negatively in their careers. Contrariwise, Eric Abramson, professor of management at Columbia Business School, says mess isn't necessarily an absence of order. A messy desk can be highly effective prioritizing and accessing system. This is because on a messy desk, the urgent work tends to stay nearby, whereas less important stuff gets buried away. However, this is just one example. In retrospect, one can also see this in one of the most successful entrepreneurs of today, the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk. Musk is often criticized for his wacky, unconventional, and more importantly, unprofessional personality, but still stands as a leader driving innovation in ideas like SpaceX. A good businessman needs to be arrogant.
Was he a good boss?
He was. I consider him my friend. He holds everyone, including himself, up to incredibly high standards, and he won't compromise on the customer experience. He's got a unshakable conviction that the long-term interests of customers and shareholders are perfectly aligned, and he's willing to be misunderstood within and outside of the company, and cannot be taken away from that conviction. And I think that's one of the things that has made Amazon an enduring company moving forward.
Recently, a notion of arrogance being associated with success has arisen as another stereotype in business, since a large proportion of successful entrepreneurs in the past have been hard-headed, hubristic ones. Arrogance has suddenly become a desirable quality for aspiring business professionals. Individuals like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg have unintentionally paved the way for this stereotype. A Wall Street Journal article reported that humble leaders inspire close teamwork, rapid learning, and high performance in their teams. In addition, as shown by the TV news interview with an Amazon representative, another one of the most successful entrepreneurs today of the everything store is willing to be misunderstood within and outside of the company, setting a gold example for potential innovators. Only prodigies can be truly successful.
Most likely Virgin, who now employs 90,000 people, would not have been successful if I hadn't been dyslexic.
Explain how you learned the difference between net and gross.
So I'm dyslexic, and I was hopeless at school, which is one of the reasons I left school at 15. But I could never comprehend things like net or gross, and I would just ask people, is that good news or bad news? And it wasn't until I was 50 that I was in a board meeting, and one of the directors said, pop outside a minute. Richard, you just said, is that good news? Did you not realize whether that was your profit or your turnover? And I said, all right, I admit it. So he said, well, look, here's a sheet of paper. And he penciled in the sheet of paper blue. Then he put a fishing net in the blue sea. And then he put some fish in the net, and he said, right, your profit at the end of the year, that's your net profit. The rest is your turnover. The sea as a whole, the fish are not in your net. And I went, hey presto, I know the difference between net and gross. And
how old were you then?
50. We had the biggest private group of companies in Europe, and I did not know the difference between net and gross. And so ever since then, I've been, net this, gross that. I've been name dropping the two words, but nobody.
There's a general air of uncertainty amongst rising entrepreneurs today. Some of the young people on that path are unconfident about their careers due to the common misconception that only geniuses or prodigies can be truly successful. When a few Babson college students were asked why they weren't aiming to be the best in the world or top of the world for the career they were going into, 4 out of 7 students referred to the idea of being intellectually gifted. Although this stereotype is beginning to lose its value, numerous people still fully agree with it. To the contrary, one is made aware of the fallacy of this belief through the many prominent businessmen today who grew up with learning disabilities, such as Sir Richard Branson. Richard Branson explains how not only did he struggle with learning in his childhood, but he continued to misunderstand core business concepts as a fully fledged businessman when he could not distinguish the difference between net profit and gross profit. However, one can't help but wonder, is there any real benefit of adhering to these stereotypes? Throughout this video, we looked at stereotypes of small flaws, arrogance, and prodigies. There is another side to each of these arguments, however. In a rational perspective, small mistakes can lead to bigger mishappenings. In 1962, a NASA rocket called Mariner 1 was set to do a simple cruise around Venus to collect scientific data. 293 seconds into the launch, a misplaced hyphen in the launch code led it to explode. In essence, a small typo in the programming of the launch made an entire $673 million project disintegrate into ashes. People don't generally actively seek to be arrogant in today's world. Nevertheless, when running a whole corporation, having the power and authority to be able to get work done to the standard required can never act against an entrepreneurial leader. Hence, one could argue that every entrepreneur has a small element of arrogance in them. Prodigies are certainly not the only individuals who can make it to the top in their careers. Conversely, this doesn't mean that having a particular skill in certain knowledge areas is not helpful. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born a child prodigy of music, playing songs on the harpsichord at 4 years old and composing his own music at 5.